Well, I've lived through quite a few recessions now, more than I care to count, really. And one thing I've noticed over all these years, one pattern that keeps showing up, is that wealthy people and regular folks, they tend to handle recessions very differently. Now, before I get into this, I want to be clear about something. I'm not saying this to brag or to put anyone down. Not at all. See, I was lucky, born in the right place at the right time, had the right teachers, the right opportunities. A lot of what happened to me, well, I won the ovarian lottery, as I like to say. But over 90 some years of watching people, watching markets, watching how wealth gets built and lost, I've seen some patterns, some behaviors, some differences in how people approach hard times. And I think if I can share what I've learned, maybe it'll help someone out there. Maybe it'll help you make better decisions when the next recession comes. And believe me, there will be a next recession. There always is. So let me tell you about five specific things that wealthy people do during recessions that most other folks don't. And more importantly, why they do them. The first thing, and this is probably the most important thing, is that the rich, they stay calm. They don't panic. See, I remember the 2008 financial crisis. I remember it very clearly. The world felt like it was ending. Banks were collapsing. The stock market was in free fall. People were losing their homes, their jobs, their savings. It was scary, really scary. And you know what most people did? They panicked. They sold their stocks at the bottom, pulled their money out of the market, put it under the mattress, basically, or in savings accounts earning nothing. And I understand why they did that. When you're watching your retirement account drop by 30, 40, 50%, when you're worried about losing your job, when you see scary headlines every single day, it's hard not to panic. It's human nature. But here's the thing. Panicking is expensive, really expensive. Because when you sell at the bottom, when you get out of the market, when things are scariest, you lock in your losses. You turn a temporary decline into a permanent one. The wealthy people I know, and I know quite a few, they didn't panic in 2008. They stayed calm. They understood something that most people don't. Recessions are temporary. Now, that doesn't mean they weren't worried, doesn't mean they enjoyed watching their portfolios go down, but they had perspective. They'd seen this before. Or if they hadn't, they'd learned from people who had. They knew that the economy goes in cycles, up and down, always has, always will. And the down parts, the recessions, they're part of the process. They're not the end of the story. I've always said, and I really believe this, the stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. And nowhere is that more true than during a recession. When prices are falling and everyone's scared, the patient people, they sit tight. They don't do anything stupid. They wait because they know that eventually things will get better. They always do. And you know what? They're always right. Every recession in American history has eventually ended. Every bear market has eventually turned into a bull market. Every crisis, no matter how scary it felt at the time, has eventually passed. But you only benefit from that recovery if you stay invested, if you stay calm, if you don't let fear drive your decisions. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. It's not. especially if you're living paycheck to paycheck. If you're worried about putting food on the table or keeping a roof over your head. When you're in survival mode, staying calm is hard, really hard. But here's what I've learned. Financial education helps. Understanding helps. If you know that recessions are temporary, if you understand that markets recover, if you've studied history and seen this pattern play out again and again, then when the next recession comes, and it will come, you'll be less likely to panic. You'll be more likely to make good decisions instead of emotional ones. And that's the first difference. The wealthy stay calm. They keep their heads when everyone else is losing theirs. And that calmness, that discipline, it's worth more than you can imagine. The second thing wealthy people do, and this is really important, is they buy when everyone else is selling. Now this sounds simple, right? Buy low, sell high. Everyone knows that. But actually doing it, that's a different story. See, buying when everyone else is selling, it means buying when things are scary, when the news is terrible, when your neighbor is telling you the world is ending. And that takes, well, it takes courage and capital and conviction. I remember in 2008, October of 2008 to be specific, I wrote an op-ed for the New York Times and I said, "Buy American, I am." Now people thought I was crazy. The market was in free fall. Every day brought new disasters. And here I was saying buy, but I meant it. Because I understood something. When everyone's selling, that's when you get the best prices. That's when wonderful companies go on sale. That's when you can buy assets for 50 cents on the dollar, or 30 cents, or 20. And that's exactly what I did. Berkshire bought billions of dollars worth of stocks during that crisis. We bought Goldman Sachs. We bought General Electric. We made deals that looked crazy at the time, but turned out pretty well. Why? Because we had cash. We'd been saving, being conservative, not doing anything stupid during the good times, and when the crisis came, we were ready. That's what wealthy people do differently. They prepare for recessions during the good times. They keep cash on hand. They don't spend every dollar they make. They save. They build reserves. And then, when everyone else is panicked and selling, they buy. They take advantage of the fear, not in a mean way, but in a smart way. They recognize opportunity when others see only danger. Now here's the thing most people don't understand. The best investments, the really great ones, they're made during recessions, not during booms. During booms, everything's expensive. Everyone's optimistic. Prices are high. You're not getting any bargains. You're paying top dollar for everything. But during recessions, that's when the deals are. That's when fear drives prices down below what things are actually worth. That's when you can buy wonderful businesses at wonderful prices. I've said this before, but it's worth repeating. Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. That's the whole game right there. That's how you build wealth. But to do that, to actually be greedy when others are fearful, you need two things. You need cash money that's available to invest, and you need courage, the guts, to buy when it feels scary. And most people don't have both of those things. They don't have the cash because they spent everything during the good times. And they don't have the courage because being contrarian is hard. Going against the crowd is hard. But wealthy people, they've learned to do both. They've learned to save during good times, and they've learned to be brave during bad times. And that's how they get richer during recessions. Not by panicking, not by selling, by buying, by taking advantage of opportunities that only come around when everyone else is scared. The third thing, and this one's really important too, is that wealthy people protect their income streams. What do I mean by that? Well, let me explain. During a recession, a lot of people lose their jobs. Companies lay people off. Businesses shut down. And suddenly, people who were doing fine are struggling to pay their bills. Now, if your only source of income is your job, and you lose that job, you're in trouble, real trouble. You've got no money coming in. Your savings, if you have any, start draining fast, and you're forced to make desperate decisions. But wealthy people, they don't rely on just one income stream. They have multiple sources. They've built what I call economic moats around their income. Let me give you an example. Let's say you own stocks that pay dividends. Even if you lose your job, those dividends keep coming. That's income that doesn't depend on you showing up to work every day. Or maybe you own rental properties. You've got tenants paying rent every month. Even in a recession, people need places to live so that income keeps flowing. Or maybe you've built a side business, something you do in addition to your main job. If your main job goes away, you've still got that business generating income. See, wealthy people understand something important. Your income is your most important asset, more important than your house, more important than your car, more important than anything else. Because without income, you can't survive. You can't pay your bills. You can't build wealth. So they protect it. They diversify it. They make sure they're not dependent on any single source. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Warren, that's great for rich people, but I'm just trying to pay my bills. I don't have extra money to invest in stocks or rental properties. And I understand that, I really do. But here's the thing. You can start small. You don't need to buy a whole rental property. Maybe you rent out a spare room. Or you start a small side business, something simple, something you're good at. The point is, you need to be thinking about this before the recession hits. You can't wait until you've lost your job to start building alternative income streams. By then, it's too late.
Wealthy people think about this during good times. They ask themselves, what happens if I lose my job? What happens if my main income goes away? And then they prepare. They build backup plans. They diversify. And when the recession comes, they're not as vulnerable. They've got income flowing from multiple sources. So even if one source dries up, they're okay. They can survive. They can keep going.
That's the third difference. Wealthy people protect their income streams. They don't put all their eggs in one basket. They build multiple sources of income so they're not dependent on any single one. And you can do this too. Maybe not as extensively as someone with millions of dollars, but you can start. You can take steps. You can build at least one or two alternative income streams. Because when the next recession comes, and it will come, you'll be so glad you did. The fourth thing, and this is something I've done my whole life, is that wealthy people invest in themselves during recessions. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean they use downturns as opportunities to learn, to grow, to improve their skills. They don't just sit around feeling sorry for themselves. They don't waste time complaining about the economy. They read, they study, they take classes, they learn new skills that'll make them more valuable when things recover. I've always believed that the best investment you can make is in yourself, in your own skills, your own knowledge, your own abilities, because nobody can take that away from you. You can lose your money, you can lose your job, but you can't lose what you've learned. During the 2008 crisis, while a lot of people were just worrying and watching TV, smart people were going back to school, learning new skills, getting certifications, building their resumes. And when the economy recovered, they were ready. They were more valuable, more skilled, more employable, and they ended up doing better than they did before the recession. See, here's something most people don't realize. Recessions are temporary, but skills are permanent. If you spend a recession improving yourself, learning, growing, developing, then when things get better, you're in a much better position. Now, I'm not talking about going into massive debt for education. That's not what I mean. I'm talking about smart, targeted learning. Books cost $20. Online courses cost $100, maybe $200. You don't need to spend a fortune, but you do need to invest time. You need to be intentional. You need to ask yourself, what skills would make me more valuable? What knowledge would help me in my career? What should I be learning right now? And then you need to do it. You need to make the time. Turn off Netflix, put down your phone, and invest in yourself. I spend a lot of my time reading, always have. 5, 6 hours a day, sometimes more. And people ask me, Warren, why do you still read so much? You're in your 90s. You've already made your fortune. And I tell them, because I'm still learning. Because there's always more to know. Because the world keeps changing and I want to keep up. And if I'm still learning in my 90s, well, you should be learning too, especially during a recession, especially when you've got time on your hands. Wealthy people understand this. They know that investing in themselves, in their skills, their knowledge, their abilities, that's the one investment that always pays off. Because when you're more skilled, you earn more. You're more valuable to employers. You have more opportunities. You can solve bigger problems. You can create more value. And the beautiful thing is, this is something anyone can do. You don't need to be rich to read a book. You don't need to be wealthy to take an online course. You don't need millions of dollars to invest in yourself. You just need time and discipline and a commitment to getting better. So that's the fourth thing. Wealthy people invest in themselves during recessions. They use downturns as opportunities to learn and grow. And when things recover, they're ready, they're better, they're more valuable. And the fifth thing, this is the last one, and it might be the most important. Wealthy people think long term. See, during a recession, most people get stuck thinking about right now, about this month's bills, about keeping their job, about survival, and I get it. When things are tough, you got to focus on surviving. You got to make sure you can eat, pay rent, keep the lights on. That's real. That's important. But wealthy people, even in tough times, they're thinking about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. They're asking themselves, when this recession is over, where do I want to be? What position do I want to be in? And then they make decisions today that'll get them there. Let me tell you a story. Back in the early 1970s, we had a nasty recession. Inflation was high, the economy was struggling, stocks were down. A lot of people were scared, really scared, and I remember. There was this newspaper company, the Washington Post. Great company, wonderful business. But the stock had been beaten down by the recession. It was trading at a fraction of what it was worth. And I looked at that and I thought long term. I asked myself, 20 years from now, will people still read newspapers? Will the Washington Post still be valuable? And my answer was, yes. So I bought. I bought a lot. Even though everyone thought I was crazy. Even though the economy was struggling. And you know what? I was right. Not because I was smarter than everyone else, but because I was thinking long term. I was looking past the recession to what things would be worth when it was over. That's what wealthy people do. They zoom out. They look at the bigger picture. They don't get caught up in the day-to-day panic. Now, I know this is hard when you're struggling. I know it's hard to think about 10 years from now when you're worried about next month. But here's the thing. If you only think short term, if you only focus on right now, you'll make short-term decisions. And short-term decisions, they usually don't build wealth. Wealth gets built over time, over years, over decades. It's like planting a tree. You plant it today, you water it, you nurture it, and 20 years later, you've got this big, beautiful tree giving you shade. But if you keep digging up the tree to see if it's growing, it'll never grow. You got to leave it alone. Let it do its thing. Be patient. And that's what long-term thinking is about. Patience. Trust in the process. Understanding that good things take time. Wealthy people get this. They're not trying to get rich quick. They're building wealth slowly, steadily over time. And recessions, well, recessions are just bumps in the road, temporary setbacks. not the end of the journey. I've always said the stock market is the most efficient mechanism ever created for transferring wealth from the impatient to the patient. And that's never more true than during a recession. The impatient people, they panic, they sell, they make emotional decisions, and they lose money, sometimes a lot of money. But the patient people, they stay calm. They think long term. They keep their eye on where they want to be in 5 or 10 years, and they make decisions based on that, not on today's headlines. So that's the fifth thing. Wealthy people think long term. They don't get caught up in short-term panic. They keep their focus on the future, on where they want to be, on what they're building. Now let me bring this all together. Let me tell you what all of this really means. See, these 5 things, staying calm, buying when others sell, protecting income streams, investing in yourself, thinking long term, they're not magic. They're not secrets. They're not things that only rich people can do. Anyone can do these things. Anyone. You don't need $1 million. You don't need a fancy degree. You don't need special connections. What you need is knowledge, discipline, patience. You need to understand how wealth gets built, and you need to be willing to do things that most people won't do. Because here's the truth. Most people won't stay calm during a recession. Most people won't buy when everyone else is selling. Most people won't protect their income streams or invest in themselves or think long term. Most people will panic. They'll make emotional decisions. They'll focus only on surviving right now without thinking about tomorrow. And that's why wealth gaps grow during recessions. Because the people who know these principles, who understand how wealth works, they take advantage. They use recessions as opportunities. While everyone else is panicking, they're buying. While everyone else is frozen with fear, they're moving forward. And when the recession ends, they come out stronger, wealthier, better positioned. Now, I want to be clear about something. I'm not blaming people who struggle during recessions. I'm not saying it's their fault. A lot of folks, they're just trying to survive. They're doing the best they can with what they know. But that's why I'm sharing this. Because maybe if more people understood these principles, more people could protect themselves, could position themselves better, could use recessions as opportunities instead of just surviving them. You know, I've been very fortunate in my life, very lucky. Born in America, born at the right time, had great teachers, great opportunities. But one thing I did right, one thing I can take some credit for, is that I learned these principles early, and I stuck with them, even when it was hard, even when everyone thought I was wrong. And those principles, they work. They've worked for me for 90-some years. They've worked for every successful investor I know, and they'll work for you too if you apply them. So here's what I'd say to you, especially if you're young or if you're just starting to think about building wealth. Learn these principles. Really learn them, understand them, not just intellectually, but deeply, in your gut. And then, when the next recession comes, and it will come, you'll be ready. You won't panic. You'll stay calm. You'll see opportunity where others see only danger. You'll protect your income. You'll invest in yourself. You'll think long term. And you'll come out of that recession stronger than you went in. That's the difference. That's what separates the wealthy from everyone else. Not luck, not connections, not being born rich, but knowledge, discipline, patience, and the courage to do things differently. Anyone can do this. I really believe that. You don't need to be special. You just need to be willing to learn, to be disciplined, to think differently than most people. And if you do that, if you really commit to these principles, then over time, over years and decades, you'll build wealth, real, lasting wealth. Not overnight, not through some get-rich-quick scheme, but slowly, steadily, surely, like rolling a snowball down a hill. Start small, keep rolling, and one day you'll look back and realize how far you've come. That's what I've done. That's what successful people do, and that's what you can do too. So remember these 5 things. Stay calm. Buy when others sell. Protect your income. Invest in yourself. Think long term. Do those things, and you'll be doing what the wealthy do. And when the next recession comes, you'll be ready. You'll be one of the people who comes out stronger, who sees opportunity, who builds wealth while others are just trying to survive. That's my message to you today. That's what I've learned over a long life. And I really hope it helps you. Because at the end of the day, wealth isn't just about having money. It's about security, freedom, options, the ability to take care of yourself and your family, to not live in fear, to build something lasting. And that's available to everyone. Not easy, but available, if you're willing to learn, to be disciplined, to do things differently. So that's what I'd encourage you to do. Learn these principles, apply them, and when the next recession comes, be ready. Be calm, be smart, be patient, and remember, recessions are temporary, but the decisions you make during them, those last forever. Make good ones.